Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Healthy Joints, Healthy Lifestyle Show. For those who don't know me, my name is Dr. Dada, and I'm a rheumatologist. I help people with joint pain become pain-free and people with autoimmune diseases get their immune system back on track. Today, we have a lovely guest, my dear friend, Cheryl Crow. She is unique actually because not only has she had rheumatoid arthritis and looking at it from a patient's point of view, but she's also an occupational therapist and educator. And she's lived with rheumatoid arthritis for 18 years and she uses her personal experience to really empower others through education, advocacy, and support. So she is just one of a kind. I totally admire her. And I'm so glad that she's had time to talk to our audience about a lot of the things that she has done. Now, she's founded Arthritis Life. So it's an online platform and she has a live podcast. I haven't even begun to do justice to what Cheryl has done and really contributed to our community. So I am going to welcome Cheryl to our show and have her tell us a little bit about why she does what she does. Welcome, Cheryl.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's so great to be here. And yeah, um, my passion in life, really, I have so many things to say. My brain is like, I'm so
Okay.
happy to be
Oh,
here.
don't worry. We got time. Take your
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, so like really it's just the project of Arthritis Life has been a culmination of, blending my occupational therapy expertise with my patient experience, just simply just to help others, and I think most people who've been through a difficult journey find it therapeutic to help others who are maybe further back on the path, maybe just starting their autoimmune journey. So it's been wonderful to me and to meet rheumatologists like you who are so receptive to, the patient voice and the occupational therapist role. Like the interdisciplinary team has been wonderful. So thanks for having me.
Oh, well, you're definitely welcome. Welcome to the Healthy Joints, Healthy Lifestyle Show. One of the things that, I would say, it has to be collaborative, right?
Yes.
In the final analysis, we're trying to make sure that we improve the quality of life of the patient. So I triply appreciate all the efforts that you make, because after I'm done with my visit, that the fact that they can continue to get better and use additional holistic approaches to improve their quality of life is something I think as rheumatologists and as patients, we're all appreciative of.
Yeah.
So, tell me, what inspired you to be an occupational therapist?
Yeah. Interestingly, it's not actually directly arthritis at first. I always wanted to be a teacher
Ah,
and I wanted to be a special education teacher specifically. And so I learned about occupational therapy through being like a teacher's assistant in a school for children with developmental and behavioral challenges. And I noticed that I realized through my own experience that being the classroom teacher is for me was not the right fit with my personality versus one-on-one. I really wanted to work with people one-on-one. And I saw that the kids who got to go to OT, they got to really know the OT and have that one-on-one relationship. So when I went to OT school, that was my goal. But then I learned so much about arthritis. And I'll backtrack for a second because a lot of people don't know about what occupational therapy is. So maybe I'll
mm,
share quickly what it is. It's one of the allied health fields that is most often kind of similar in some ways to physical therapy or speech and language pathology, where we get to work with the patients for an hour, usually, unless you're in like acute care in the hospital. And our goal as OTs, I say we're like if a psychologist had a baby with a physical therapist, we're like a blend because we are actually trained more extensively in mental health than physical therapists and that's just objectively true. It's not like one's better than the other. It's just a different frame of reference. Like I did an internship at Harborview Medical Center in just inpatient psychiatry, which nothing to do with physical health goals. But so how is that possible? Our profession's goal is improving the individual's ability to function in the context of their life and overcoming whatever challenge it is that makes it hard for them to function in their life. So a newborn baby, that's being able to coordinate, suck, swallow, breathe for feeding, an elderly person, what is necessary in their life is to safely navigate the home or something like that. And then as someone in inpatient psychiatry might be able to take care of yourself through, making your meals each day. So anyway, long story short, I went into the field with a narrow focus, and then it just I realized how many different areas we could work in. And anyway, eventually, the reason I shifted, I did work in schools and outpatient clinics with children because it's kind of a calling to work with children, and I love working with them. But when I had my own child, it became like, and managing my autoimmune disease, I was tired. And working one-on-one with children with challenges is challenging when you have your own child at home.
Definitely.
So during the pandemic, or before the pandemic, anyway, I started my own YouTube channel, similar to you. And I was like, I really feel like I want to serve the people who have rheumatoid arthritis because so many patients were coming to me. I would share on social media just little tips and tricks. And I partner with the Arthritis Foundation, and I would do little talks here and there. And each time I talked about just ways to improve your quality of life with arthritis, people were like, oh my gosh, no one's ever told me this. I'm all on my own. I just see my doctor for 20 minutes every 3 months. And no matter how amazing my doctor is, I have to figure this all out on my own after that. Where's the rest of my support? So I ended up pivoting to create programs for people with rheumatoid arthritis. So I don't know how to tell it any shorter. No, I could work on it, but that's in a
No, no,
nutshell.
that's
Yeah.
eye-opening, and it's, and just love the fact that you kind of have always, you still kind of continued. You've always wanted to teach, right?
That's
You're still kind of doing it. You found different
yeah.
paths, and until you found kind of, the audience that you really kind of felt kind of a pull towards. But
Hmm.
that inner desire to want to teach, like, it sounds like it has pretty much been consistent through your career and path.
Thank you for making that. Actually, I hadn't thought of that. And so I think that's a great way to put it. Yeah. I do
Um,
love teaching. And being on social media, yeah, you're teaching people,
yeah.
ways to live better with their conditions. So I love that.
It's almost like meet them where they are, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. So, how has your experiences with rheumatoid arthritis kind of led to some of the work that you've done, right? So,
Mhm.
you've done, the Room to Thrive. And actually, tell us about the Room to Thrive. Tell us, what
Mm.
is that? Because I'm very curious. I did some work on it just by looking it up before
Yeah.
this conversation today. But it looks like there's so much in the background that I just didn't have access to.
Oh, yeah.
Tell our audience, what is Room to Thrive?
Yeah, so Room to Thrive is considered a self-management program. And these self-management programs are like evidence-based for all chronic illnesses. And they simply are, again, back to that teaching, it's teaching people how to manage the day-to-day of their conditions. Because no matter how amazing your medical team is, whether you have a full team of all these professionals to help you, at the end of the day, if it's a chronic illness, you're going to live with the rest of your life. It's in your best, you're going to have to be implementing the tools. So typically self-management covers things like, the managing your medications, managing your symptoms, and also integrating the lifestyle interventions, things like nutrition, things like exercise and movement and sleep. You can see my office. This is my office bed in the background. It's like our my office slash guest room, but I take little rest breaks on that bed because rest for me, having an autoimmune disease, is so important. But anyway, so
It is.
self-management,
It
it
is
is so
actually
important. It's
important.
I always say it's like the forgotten lifestyle variable because everyone wants to talk about diet and exercise, but they forget about sleep and rest, right?
And just to emphasize it, I think I was interviewing a doc the other day, and she said that imagine you can actually go without food for quite a while, and you can go without exercise for quite a while. But she was very vocal, but if you
Mhm.
go without sleep, you'll die. I was like, I really thought about that. I hadn't
That is
really
so
thought
true.
about that, right? So just
Yes.
emphasize your point. Yeah, everybody talks about diet and exercise and, but the sleep is critical. So yeah,
Sleep.
yeah.
Yeah, and stress management too, I would add. And then, so the Room to Thrive framework, I had actually gotten trained in something called like the what is it? It's the chronic, there's like a generic or general like chronic illness self-management program. Yes, CI. SMP. Yeah, through it was originally developed in like Stanford University, and it's listed as like an evidence-based chronic illness self-management program. But to me, it was a little bit too introductory. I was like, I want to give something with a little bit like it was more like the middle school level, and I wanted to get to develop something that was more specific to rheumatoid arthritis and inflammatory arthritis conditions. And then B was more like kind of at the high school or college level in terms of really digging into, what is pain science? What is the science behind fatigue? What is the science behind stress? And teaching people, I think if you just tell people do all this stuff and you don't teach them why, it's harder for them to remember to do it, you
Definitely.
know? So yeah, so Thrive is an acronym. So Rheum is like spelled RHEUM, like rheumatology. And then Thrive is an acronym. So the T is tools for pain and fatigue. And then the H is healthy or helpful habits, and that covers nutrition, sleep, and exercise. And then the R is relationships and social life, which we know that's critical for quality of life. I is inner world, so mental health, anxiety, coping with stress, coping with depression, and knowing what your resources are for that. And then V is values and valued activities, which is often missed, right? People are like, your whole life needs to be about controlling your symptoms. But it's therapeutic to say what's important to us, what's meaningful to us. How can I still participate in those things, maybe in a different way because of my condition? And then E is executive functioning, which is like the CEO task. So you're the CEO of your healthcare experience, for better or worse. So things like symptom tracking, preparing for medical appointments, organizing your medical records, something I wish I had done better when I was diagnosed in 2003, because I didn't realize that I thought some like entity, I guess I thought I lived in like socialized medicine. I thought some entity was like keeping my medical record for me, but that's not the case. It's all
Mm.
fragmented. Whatever place I saw kept their own record. And anyway, long story short, kind of getting organized. That's the E. And so I have a self-paced course people can just take any time and go through it on their own. And I have a program that's a course plus a support group, or I kind of call it an educational support group, where we have a theme of the week based on the framework, and then we discuss, what's going well, what's not going well with that, and then we open it up to general support, people sharing their wins, their vents, their fails, and questions, and we help each other navigate life with this condition. So it's been awesome. I've been doing it for 5 years now. Yeah.
Wow, wonderful. That is really something. One of the things that you kind of mentioned, and I know there's a lot of it kind of deep in your course, but
Mhm.
could you give our audience just like maybe 4 tips? If a person is dealing with rheumatoid arthritis, for instance, because one of the things that you mentioned were just, things that maybe people are not really getting when they're seeing their doctor. But
Mm.
potentially, 4 things that, in the real world, that people particularly with rheumatoid, or maybe even just autoimmune disease, or maybe even just arthritis, because it may not just be rheumatoid arthritis related. We mentioned something about sleep, for instance.
Yeah, yeah.
That's critical. And like you said, most people tend to overlook that as an integral part, especially in this digital age when we all have these crazy phones that always, all that bright light and all that.
Oh,
But yeah, could you give
yes.
us some tips, perhaps? Maybe tips and maybe additional 3 tips.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that idea. And I mean, I will say, echoing what you said, the number one is prioritizing sleep and rest. And there are articles out there you can read. And I have, evidence in my program of, here's some evidence-based resources. But at the end of the day, just know that we each have a little bit of a different, or people fall into different circadian rhythms. And so that can affect what works for you. So like I'm an early bird, like my circadian rhythm, like in a nap, if I just was left to my own devices and had no schedule or whatever, like I didn't have to put an alarm on, I would wake up kind of early, and then I would experience the energy dip in the afternoon. And then I would, get tired again in the evening. Whereas like my husband, he's opposite. Like he wakes up really groggy, and then he kind of gets more alert throughout the day. And then he's really alert in like the evening time. So knowing your circadian rhythm and knowing just what works for your body, like you'll find some people are like, I take naps and it works great. Other people are like, I can't take a nap. So I think no, I guess one intervention or would be like from a mental health perspective or stress management, just being patient with yourself and knowing that it's going to be like a detective process. Like you are going to have to do trial and error. And that's not a failure. That's just normal. I think a lot of people feel like everyone else has it all figured out and I don't. Not at all. Like everyone's experimenting. So that's one. Then two would be really don't overlook the importance of sleep and rest. And you have to advocate for your need to sleep and rest in your social environment. A lot of times, like I was diagnosed when I was 21. So I've actually lived with it for 22 years now. I just need to update my bio, but because I'm 43. And a lot of times I never had peer pressure to do drugs. I had peer pressure to stay up late. That was my peer pressure, I mean, so I call myself a sleep diva. Like I'm like, no, like, and my husband is great. He's an engineer, so he just gets it. He's like, we call the bed. This is actually an idea from Dr. Christine Stamatos. She was the former president of the Association of Rheumatology Professionals. She's a nurse practitioner. She says your bed is your recharging station. Like for your cell phone, you charge your phone, you have to charge your body on your station, which is your bed. So, and then number three is this is so unintuitive for people living with fatigue. But first of all, just know that fatigue is a symptom of your condition because a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
But along with that, that unintuitively, movement and exercise are the strongest evidence-based intervention lifestyle-wise for fatigue in rheumatoid arthritis.
Yes.
And if it doesn't make sense to you, I get you because the last thing you want to do when you're really, really fatigued is exercise or move. But it's a vicious cycle. The less you move, the more conditioned you become. And I'm saying this as an occupational therapist, and a patient. I've experienced this, and particularly, I don't have evidence for this specifically, but I've noticed anecdotally in my life that once I added strength training into my routine, in addition to cardio, exercise, I really saw an improvement in fatigue, and I wasn't expecting it. So anyway, those would be
I
the
think
three things.
yeah, those are brilliant, actually.
Mhm.
And, I really would emphasize to the last one because sometimes I think patients may not even think about, reporting that particular symptom of fatigue, right? Like,
Exactly.
I've just kind of always been tired and that's just how I am. And, and it almost sounds counterintuitive, but that's exactly what we need. That is the time to kind of try to exercise. And it doesn't mean like getting up and trying to run a marathon and hurting yourself. It's just graduate. Start where you are and then gradually
Hmm.
ease yourself and grow because we're looking at the long-term project. We're not looking at, well, I exercised today and I'm done. Been there, done
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Checklist.
Yeah.
It is something that we want to kind of gradually incorporate into our lives. And so if we go too
Mhm.
aggressive, we hurt ourselves. We lift too heavy initially, we hurt ourselves. Then then you're like, well, I tried it, I got hurt, and then I didn't do it anymore, right? So then we
Right.
want to kind of gradually, and if you need physical therapy and OT to help you to get there, most doctors are happy to write that, especially when you're
Yeah.
really trying to get that quality of life and the fatigue just, I feel it steals from you though, right? It
Yes.
steals, the fatigue steals the energy, the joy, because then you're too tired to enjoy the things that you want to do. So starting
Exactly.
with the exercise, I think it's so critical. We talked about sleep, but the exercise is also important, especially if you're dealing with fatigue. So thank you so much for just highlighting that for our audience.
Mm.
So beyond medical treatment that we've kind of, that's kind of my realm. I really am curious about what do you feel are some of the most overlooked non-medical interventions, in addition to what we said, that can significantly impact the arthritis management?
Yeah, I think, well, it depends on what like what you're looking for as an outcome, but the one thing I haven't really emphasized that I want to emphasize
Yeah.
is the importance of coping skills and stress management. And I'll say that I was really resistant to admitting or recognizing that stress affected my health and my symptoms because I was told, anyway, this is a long story. I have like a 45-minute version of my diagnosis story on my own YouTube, but I was told, oh, you're not sick. You're just stressed. You just need to relax before I got my diagnoses of RA and gastroparesis. By the way, I got diagnosed with both of those in 2003 after being told repeatedly for 2 years, you just need to go to psych. You just need to not stress. You're just complaining. Like it was really upsetting. And so because I was told that you're not sick, you're just stressed, I learned in my head, I was like, okay, well, it's not ever stress. Like stress never has an effect on me because see, I was right. I was actually sick and that was stressing me. So anyway, that's my own individual baggage. This is why we go to therapy. So by the way, take away the stigma of therapy. Therapy is amazing. And so when I eventually went to therapy and talked about all sorts of stuff, anxiety and everything, I come to realize that I that my stress does affect my, stress is inflammatory. It affects my overall health and it affects my quality of life too. So man, learning how to, cope with stress. And I think the hardest thing for me has been uncertainty, like coping with uncertainty, because, and I think rheumatologists are like the best positioned to talk about uncertainty because you're in a specialty that is like characterized by all these medical mysteries and gray areas. That's why when on my podcast, when I had you on, I asked, like, why did you become a rheumatologist? To me, that would be the hardest one. I think a neurosurgery is easier than, it doesn't mean I'm not a doctor. Obviously, like, I'm not valid to like say this, but my opinion, because at least in the brain, you could see what you're doing. With rheumatoid, you can't see what's going on here. You have to just take this like subjective report and combine it with your objective measures and really use your brain to figure out what's going on. It's hard.
Gotta be a detective.
Yeah, you are a detective. You're amazing. And so like and just like you had to be a detective for us, we have to be a detective in our body. And I think what I see in my support groups is a lot of people are like, they're trying, right? They're like, I want to implement, like we mentioned, sleep interventions, movement, exercise. And it's really overwhelming and confusing when
Mhm.
you try to change a variable and then it's never just one at a time. Like the scientific method is like you keep everything the same and then you change one variable.
Mhm.
When in our lives are we able to only change one variable? Like it's not realistic, right? So then you're like, okay, I started exercising and I'm feeling worse, but I also like tapered off of my prednisone at the same time. So am I feeling worse because of that? Or also, my
Yeah.
mom got sick and now I'm taking care of her. So now I'm more stressed. So understanding that there's going to be this, I think a lot of people search for certainty as a way to relieve that anxiety. And they're like, okay, I just need to go on this diet. I just need to do this plan and it will resolve that fundamental uncertainty. But really, uncertainty is just like we can't beat it. We can't, it's fundamentally part of life that and especially life with a autoimmune disease, that there's going to be a level of uncertainty at the end of the day. Like your doctor can tell you 99% of the time this works. You still don't know if you're going to be the 1% that it doesn't work for. You just have to learn to cope with that. So that's hard.
And so yeah, and so I'm hearing that, because as a doctor, I'm like, it's gonna help 99% of the time, and we should all be happy because it's gonna work. And you're right, the patient on the other end is saying, what if I'm in the 1%? And I'm not really expecting that. I'm thinking, we got this handle, it's gonna work. We have a treatment option. It may not be, I think the uncertainty for us also is we're like, the first treatment may not necessarily work. Right. So it
Mhm.
may be treatment number two, three, four. And while I'm excited at the fact that I have all these options to offer my patients, on the other side, when I'm now hearing you talking about the fact that the uncertainty is adding to the stress, which is also adding to the inflammation, it's
Yeah.
interesting to kind of see things from a different point of view.
Yeah, I didn't even like, I think labeling things is so being able to label it, things makes them more like tangible in your mind. I didn't even identify uncertainty as a trigger for anxiety until my therapist did. It's like that classic therapist thing. Like it sounds like uncertainty is a trigger. And I was like, well, yeah, uncertainty sucks. Like that's the whole goal is to get rid of it. And then, they have to like lead you through like, is that realistic? Are you going to be able to, think about the analogy of, pregnancy. We like, I think, isn't it the case? I think I read this, so sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, but like 97% of births are like uneventful and like go fine. But that
Yeah.
3% that don't go well are like really, really bad. So you're like, okay, I'm most like, it's like, are you an optimist or pessimist? But like when it comes to health, we kind of are, it's in our best interest, right? The evolutionary, like lizard part of our brain is like risk,
Yeah.
risk, risk, like assess risk,
Yep.
you
That's
know? So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. Yeah, the primitive part of our brain is what kept us alive, and it didn't keep us alive by saying, "Oh, 19, it's 90%
Yes,
gonna be
yeah,
like, you know what, that 10% chance is like the next village is coming." Like,
yeah, 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 exactly. This tiger's probably not going to
it's
kill me.
probably is
Yeah,
not gonna, yes, it's
yeah,
mind its own business, but people who thought that way became extinct and left the people who were paranoid and moved.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So, tell me about a story of a patient that you've worked with who had an
Mm,
amazing outcome after the benefit of being in your care.
yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, but and I will say that what I'm doing right now is a little bit doing group interventions is a little different than the average occupational therapist who's doing one-on-one. But so in the support groups, which is what I'm doing currently, I am thinking of a woman who she, I think so commonly, she's in her 20s and she has not only inflammatory arthritis, but she also has another like rare disease on top of that. And she just felt really alone and overwhelmed, and like no one in her life understood what she was going through. And she didn't know what she could do in her life. Like when you're young, you're like, okay, well, I have to plan, like I'm in college. What am I going to even major in? She wanted to be a therapist and like psychotherapist, and she wasn't sure if she could still even get through school. So through the program, she learned like advocacy skills. That's we teach that in the executive functions part. And she, learned the tools for pain and fatigue. And I'm not going to say that then now she has no symptoms. She's still up and down, actually. I just talked to her earlier this week, and she's doing what you talked about with the medications. She's stopping one and then she's going to start another. So she's still having these ups and downs, but she was able to feel confident enough to advocate for herself for accommodations in school, and then applied to grad school and to become a psychotherapist and got in. So it's like being able to, like, again, we're talking about quality of life at the end of the day, like being able to feel less alone, like you have a support system, be able to make decisions in your life to say, okay, this is what my dream is. I'm going to find a way to still do it. She may have to work part-time as a psychotherapist, but she can still do it. That's really it. Now that I've been doing this for 5 years, it's been really fun to see people
Wow.
like, do you know what I'm saying? Like they
Yes.
like kind of grow, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you're already like gonna be going to grad school. Like, it's just,
And
yeah,
that's
it's
amazing.
yeah,
That is
yeah,
amazing. That is amazing. I love that. Yeah, fully for her. I'm proud of her.
yeah,
Great. So if you had any, it's my favorite question.
yeah, I love
If
it.
you had any superpower,
Yeah.
what
To
would it
improve.
be and why?
That's so funny because I was telling you before we recorded that I went to Comic-Con yesterday. So I'm just thinking about
We both
that.
love Comic-Con. That's why
Yeah.
I love the superpower. It's great.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think honestly, this is like my core drive is to help people feel better, like
Yeah,
feel emotionally
yeah.
better. So I think the first thing that came to mind when I saw that question was like to a realistic superpower would be like realistically given like that life will still include some kind of suffering, right?
Mm,
Like I mean, if you could eliminate all suffering from life, obviously that would be great. But assuming that there's going to be still some level of suffering in life, then the superpower would be feeling confident or resilient that you can cope with whatever life come throws at you,
mhm,
and
mhm.
that you have that capacity to thrive even when there's challenges and difficulties. So,
Capacity to thrive, even when
yeah.
there are challenges and difficulties.
And
Yes.
I have to put a plug really quick for the therapeutic framework that helped me the most in coming to this kind of outlook on life, is acceptance and commitment therapy. It's called ACT is for short, but it's like a cognitive behavior therapy and mindfulness approach. So it's about saying acceptance. I know that's a scary word to people with chronic illness, but acceptance in the kind of mindfulness definition of taking what's offered and being able to be present with whatever is happening in your life. Not that you're feeling peaceful, not that you're feeling happy, just being able to have that capacity to be present. And then that's the mindfulness part. The commitment therapy part is then committing to living according to your values despite what's happening in life, rather than making your whole life about like fixing whatever is challenging you. So that's why it's a little different than traditional CBT. But long story short, if you've never heard of that, I find it personally way more helpful than traditional cognitive behavior therapy. And actually, for chronic pain, the evidence is stronger for ACT than traditional cognitive behavior therapy. So that's kind of how I've that has really influenced my worldview. So yeah.
Wow. I like that. That's an interesting acceptance and
Yeah.
commitment.
And I can send you offline. There's actually a training called ACT as a brief intervention meant for actually like primary care doctors. But it's like, how can you integrate these principles into a quick, like a short visit? Like it's meant for, yeah, again, like for primary care. But I took that course because anyone can take it, and even though I'm not a doctor, but it's really great. So anyway, so I know we need to wrap up, but I just had to put that plug in real quick at the end.
Yeah, no, that's so important because, the opposite of that would be resentment, right?
Well, well, and
Not,
yeah, and what's
not
interesting is it's,
having the opportunity to thrive.
yes.
But go
A-
ahead.
And it also is a lot of times people who are interested in like wellness and improving quality of life really myopically focus on symptom control and controlling your underlying disease, which obviously we need to. I say in my mind, like fix the fixable, like fix what you can, but then what do you do with you? I think sometimes people go down this road where they're like so focused on like, well, if I just eat the right things and exercise, I will never feel pain or suffering again. But life is suffering. That's why it's very mindful. It's kind of Buddhist based. And so it's like you can run, but you can't hide. Like, so yes, it will improve your quality of life to control what you can. But what about giving yourself the tools to have tools like distress tolerance, like being able to improve your ability to cope with stress. And I think it's a really refreshing point of view. A lot of people who've done my program say like, this is a lot more doable to me, or it feels more like it's more balanced. I say like balancing a fixing mindset with a coping mindset. You can't just make your whole life about fixing, because then you don't have space. Like you're so, the example, I'm sorry, I don't mean to knock, like, I think restrictive diets don't work for a lot of patients, just from my experience, but if it works for you, go for it. But there's so many patients I've seen that are like, they have made their whole life about, they've made all the financial things and all these sacrifices to make the perfect diet. And it's like, so you're doing this perfect diet so that what? So that you can control your symptoms. Okay, so, but then what's the so what after that? So that you can have a good life. But you're miserable because you're spending all your money eating the perfect food and all your time obsessing over what you're eating. Your quality of life is horrible. So, obviously some people are able to balance that. They have a super healthy diet and they feel great and it works for them. But that, do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that in the autoimmune space and in the wellness space, there can be such a focus just on symptom control rather than saying, okay, well, how do we live with this? Like, assuming we're not going to get these symptoms 100% under control, can we still live a good life? I go swing dancing and my hands hurt, but I'm okay with that because I love dancing and it makes me happy, stuff like that. So.
Well, balancing that fixing mindset is so important. I'm going to have you back,
Yeah, yeah, well, yes.
because you just have a world of information, and I'm learning a lot of things that I actually did not have access to. So even the ACT, even I'm interested in even your Room Thrive program to Thrive
Yeah.
program. So you definitely I'm going to have you back where we can really do a deep dive into a lot of these options that I
That's so
think the
nice.
fact that you've actually been in this space for so long, you've actually been able to sieve out what helps, what doesn't help, and what may be more appropriate for a lot of our listeners.
Mhm.
But for everyone, if you want to kind of get more information about a lot of the work that Cheryl Crow is doing, you're going to find the media links below. But Cheryl, can you tell us how people can find you?
Yeah, you're not going to be surprised at my website URL. It's arthritis.theenthusiasticlife.com.
Okay. I love
I
it.
registered that domain, theenthusiasticlife.com, in like 2010 when I started a blog, and then I have like an arthritis part. So arthritis.theenthusiasticlife.com. And then I'm most active on Instagram in terms of social media. So it's Instagram is like arthritis underscore life underscore Cheryl, spelled with a CH. So CHERYL. And also have a YouTube and stuff like that. But you'll see the links below.
Yeah, the links will be below. And yeah, the YouTube is at Arthritis Life.
Yeah,
So
thanks.
yeah. So everybody, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for taking your time early this morning to come over to our show.
It's
So
so
if
great.
you like this show and you think someone is going to benefit from it, please share it, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'm going to have Cheryl back because we have so much more to
So
dive
much more.
into.
Yeah.
So very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Bye bye for now.
Goodbye, everybody.